I've been several different people in this lifetime.
And you're going to continue to shift and change. And
I hope so.
Aren't you glad that you ain't the same person you were when you were 18?
Oh my gosh. I was like, I am so glad I am not my 24-year-old self. And she was amazing, but she still had a lot to learn.
She was dope, but I'm glad.
She was dope and she had abs, but...
She was dope. She had abs and she had it going on.
She had so much time. I don't know what she did with all the time that she had.
She was working on her abs. That's what she was doing.
Exactly.
When Brandi Jordan was just 19, she knew she wanted to help women through labor. She found her calling as a doula, and now over 20 years and countless babies later, Brandi is an internationally recognized postpartum doula, social worker, lactation consultant, and pediatric sleep specialist with high-profile clients such as Rosamund Pike, Megan Fox, and Julia Stiles. She is the host of Dear Doula, a podcast supporting the early weeks and months of parenthood, and the founder of the National Association of Birth Workers of Color. Brandi's goal is to help all moms, regardless of location or socioeconomic status, and to set them up to thrive once her time with them is complete. Brandi, welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
How goes it?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
First of all, thank you for such a nice, warm introduction. That person sounds amazing.
Course.
So I hope I can live up to what you just said about me.
You are her. You're that girl. And I'm a little bit salty that I didn't know you when I had a newborn with all of my babies because, the battle scars.
I think we're probably having babies around the same time. So
yeah, I think, then it wouldn't have worked.
I was on leave and you were on leave. We could have just commiserated through phone or something.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think I want to start with the first question. What is a doula?
It sounds like an easy question, but I think I will say a few things. So I have mostly worked as a postpartum doula. Yeah. And so for myself, that has meant providing support, sometimes prenatally, but definitely once parents come home from the hospital or after a home birth, helping them just to learn the ins and outs of caring for a new baby, but also making sure that the whole family is getting that kind of nurturing that they need, whether that's mom getting a cup of tea, dad learning how to give a bath, ushering in siblings to kind of be a part of this new family unit. So that's postpartum doulas. But most people, I think, are aware of birth doulas who provide actual emotional and physical support during the labor. They definitely usually meet with people before they have the baby to educate them on the process, to help them create their birth plan, to really shepherd them through. I always say it's hard to coach a sport that you haven't played. And so a doula really works as that coach for parents who haven't been through the process. With that being said, I myself have had 3 children and had a doula at all of my births. So it's definitely not just for first-time parents, but we really provide non-medical emotional support from, conception through postpartum.
That's so good that you said that too. I love the part that when you said you've had 3 babies and you had a doula for all 3.
All 3.
And can you stress the reason for that? Because I think some people have this idea that, I've already had a baby. I already know how this is going to pan out. And it's like, but do you?
Yeah. So I had been a doula for 8 years before I had my first. So as far as being versed in, I had been to plenty of births, I had done lots of postpartum. So I had quite a bit of experience for my first birth. With that being said, there's something about having that connected emotional support from someone who understands the process either as well as you do or better. For me personally, having that connection of we think about the red tent from back, in Indigenous days, having that as something that I explain to people is so invaluable. Just having someone kind of going through emotionally what it takes to bring a child into this world, however they come into the world, whether it's a belly birth or a vaginal birth, is something that you can't really put into words until you've experienced it. Having someone there who knew how to support my husband, how to help him support me, for me was just a beautiful experience. And it was a strength that I didn't know that I needed from someone else that has not failed me in each of the births. And some of the births, I had situations where we actually had to I needed someone to advocate for me with the medical staff. At this point, the situation I have with my last son, who's 7 years old, I, at this point, had been in maternal child health field for 20 plus years. And I actually emotionally, cognitively did not have the ability to have these conversations. And so thank goodness my doula and my husband were there to be able to talk through and to be able to support me, because all I could focus my energy on was what I needed to do to get this child earthside. And so I know people think about like belly balls and massage and, someone grabbing your hips, but the spiritual, emotional piece of it is the thing that actually in those times of birth, we were just like, I don't know if I can give 3 more minutes. That person is the person that gives you the 3 minutes and the 30 seconds and the 5 minutes. And my husband would say the same, that, it was as valuable for him as it was for me.
Yeah. I think people don't understand too, like the depths of that kind of support, having a doula there, that they're not just there for, the birthing person, they're also there for the entire family that's there. Can you share with us one of your most harrowing birth experiences that you've assisted?
I hate to say that there were so many, but there were so many. For those who are having children, first, can I just say this? Because I think there's a lot of talk, particularly in the past 5 years, about what it means to be a Black woman in birthing. And I am definitely a Black woman who has birthed 3 children. And so before what I say, I want to be able to say that I birthed 3 children. I came home with 3 healthy children. I hope that they will hear that this is more likely to happen for them than what I'm about to say. Because I definitely think that we're doing people a disservice to only focus on the negativity when this is one of the most beautiful things that's ever going to happen to them.
Absolutely.
When it happens how it should. And I think we deserve to have that as well, particularly, the conversations that are happening around Black and brown birth. So with that being said, I would say the most harrowing for me has been, I had a client, this is probably 12 years ago, who was doing really well, healthy woman, African-American. I had worked with them. I had done like multiple prenatal visits, like just a healthy, connected, like they did their childbirth classes, like everything about their process signaled they were ready to have this birth. From the moment we got to the hospital, it was just obstacle after obstacle. It's almost like they had to fight with people to deliver this baby. And if it was like, the check-in person saying they didn't fill something out right. Well, meanwhile, mom is trying to make it through contractions and they're being chastised about how they filled out
contraction. I don't understand that, by the way, either.
Like, if y'all don't get this paperwork, go do this tomorrow. Like
we can do this at some point, but just not right now. I don't know right now if you see her. Contraction.
The anesthesiologist actually screamed at my client. Yelled at my client, like basically chastised her because she was moving in a way that he didn't feel like she should be moving. So he chastised her. The dad was told several times that he was, basically that his presence was making her more anxious, which doesn't even make sense. Like that he should go take a breather. Now, he was very emotional about the way in which they were treating his wife, which was a valid and normal
that checks out.
Reaction.
That makes sense.
They were gaslit to be told that it was like them causing this problem. Like, you're the reason why you're anxious. You're the reason why this is going the way that it's going. And then subsequently for 14 to 16 hours straight, they were bullied into having a cesarean. Her body was too small. She was too little. She didn't push well enough. Her baby was decelerating. Like, all the things that were happening were very normal things. But they definitely just got to a point where they wore them down to the point that they didn't even trust their own feeling about what was happening in her body, if that makes sense. And so it wasn't one of the worst births as far as outcomes from what I've seen with clients, but I saw them break her spirit. You know what I mean? Like, she didn't even trust what she was feeling in her own body after 16 hours of someone telling you that you're not doing it right. You're not going to be able to do it. Your baby is, you are making the decision to harm your baby. Like, it was that for 14 to 16 hours to the point where they were just like, do what you want to do. And basically she had a cesarean to a very healthy baby and, was kind of told, aren't you so lucky you made the right decision not to harm your baby, And so I think for me, it was really harrowing because everything that was happening were things that were within the margins of normal. And so there wasn't something where you could say, like, you did this and this was illegal, or this wasn't like, we could say, oh, that wasn't nice, but like there wasn't a recourse. So it it had a helplessness to it that everyone felt and didn't know how to express. And for me, that was like probably one of my more difficult births because I didn't really see a way that I, as a doula in the situation, that I could make it better for them. Like at some point,
right.
Our role as doulas anyway isn't for to help clients make their decisions. It's to remind them of what they have said is important to them and what their wishes are, but I can't decide things for them. And so in the end, my goal was to make them feel okay about whatever decision they were deciding to make. But I left feeling really defeated for them and just for women in general who I know go through this, who have less resources, who don't have a doula, who, might, instead of being told to leave a room, might be arrested for being too emotional at a hospital. And so for me, that one stands out.
Do you feel like that's something that happens a lot? Because I know there are so many parents that are probably up at night watching this as we speak, recounting and doubting themselves and thinking about, oh, I should have done this or should have, they're shoulding themselves, basically. What would you tell them in that moment?
It's so hard because, I work mostly in postpartum. I mostly do that now. I do some births here and there. And so I'm usually seeing the aftermath of what's happened in the hospital.
Yep.
And so much.
Yep.
I'm feeling the defeat that people are feeling, like they failed, like they should have done something differently if I had just said this, or if I had waited longer to go to the hospital. And so what I usually tell parents is that they get the right to do that. They get your right to grieve that I wanted it to be this way. Instead of people telling you had a healthy baby, like that should be what you're focused on. You get to be able to say, like, this is not what I wanted. That I feel prodded and poked. I get to say that I want it to be a different way. I get to be unhappy even though I have a healthy little one. And so I validate those feelings for them, but also try to get them to remember the pieces of their birth story that they want to really be etched into their memory, into their soul, into the story that they tell their child. Because usually for most people, there's something that someone said. It's, having that first smell. It's, the husband looking at his wife do something, or a couple seeing for the first time their babies, cry. Like getting them to remember those moments that they get to create that narrative for themselves and not let what happened continue to cloud the entire memory of what should be such a special event and time in their life.
That's so good. And I know there's probably a lot of people that need to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think it's so hard for moms to take care of themselves?
Ooh, there's so many.
And that is a loaded question. I know.
Okay, so there's a couple. I think one, it's the socialization that's happened for most people, whether that is women or men, about what our roles are supposed to look like. And I think for many women, or people who identify as women, have maybe taken in this idea that we are supposed to be self-sacrificing, that the good of others, like that's part of being a good mom, being a good wife, being, a good friend, is that we are selfless and giving of ourselves. And that's throughout the globe, not just like, in the United States. But I also think, particularly now, there is a lot that people see, whether that's on social media or on television, that has painted this picture of women who have it all. And that you can have it all. And I do believe that women can have it all. It might just be really messy. And so I don't think that's what's portrayed on TV. Like they don't show that in the fine print. So I think a lot of people are trying to live up to a standard that they're seeing on Instagram or on TikTok of like how their house is supposed to be cleaned, and like they're supposed to be doing dance routines, and they should be, having sex with their husband 4 times a week, and all those things that just like most people aren't doing that. But I think there's an expectation that has been created, particularly in the past, I want to say 10 years, that has made that the norm when it's really abnormal. We start to normalize so many things that are abnormal. So I think it's a combination of, what we grow up with as far as our roles, but also I think social media and TV plays a big role in that.
Well, it's funny too. I think of, I always tell people after having a baby, don't go on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Just stay off. Unless it's something that makes you feel good and it's a warm hug. Like if it's like watching a Labradoodle snuggle with a baby, that is the cutest thing ever. But if it's anything else, stay off, because you will see some of the most unrealistic things online.
Yeah. I saw a woman doing headstands and she was like 9 months pregnant. She was like walking, doing these headstands and like showing her work. I was like, I can't do that if I was like 90 months postpartum. Like, like it's not normal.
I can't do it now.
There's just a lot that we normalize as being normal. And this I do think is specific to the United States. You know, having lived in a couple countries at this point, I think a lot, particularly self-care for North American-based women, there is this idea that they have a kid and 2 weeks later they're at the office with the baby under their desk, or they're doing work from the hospital room. That is a normal expectation, where other countries, they'd be like, are you insane? Like, you're doing what? I think we've lost that reverence that people are supposed to have downtime.
Yeah. What is the best piece of advice that you can give to moms in regard to self-care?
In regard to self-care, this is actually one that I talk about a lot. I think that for me, one of the tragedies or can become a tragedy of motherhood, is that people believe that they have to stop being who they were before they had a child.
And say that for the people in the back.
Self-care is maintaining your identity outside of motherhood, to me, is one of the biggest forms of self-care. I mean, I love my children. I adore my children. I love being a mom more than so many things that I have accomplished and done in my life and will continue to do. However, I love my work. I love my girlfriends. I love traveling. I love doing things that aren't necessarily related to or involve my children. And I think the fact that I've had that and have maintained it has made motherhood so much more enjoyable for me. And I think that goes back to what you were saying about, how we are socialized. I had the fortune that my mom is someone who kept her identity. I remember when we were kids, and my mom would have times during the week or a day where we couldn't talk to her for like an hour. And so she basically, I think, would lock herself in her bedroom. I remember knocking on her door, and she'd be like, unless it's a fire, and even then, don't
Is
call
there
me,
a fire?
call the
Do
fireman.
we see a fire?
Call 911 because I can't help either. But she literally would just
I don't see flames.
For lack of a better word, it was ignoring, but she took her time and did not feel guilty about taking that time. And so I was socialized that it was okay for me to have this time, that I was worthy of being able to do things that did not involve my children. To this day, I see my mom, she goes dancing twice a week. She does her thing, and she maintained that through raising 4 girls. And so I think if I had to say anything about self-care, is that part of that is keeping an identity that creates joy for you outside of motherhood and children. Because the other end of the spectrum, and I know a lot of my friends are going through this now because their children are now going to college and they're, looking down the barrel of, empty nesting at some point. And some of them are okay because they've maintained hobbies and a life for themselves outside of children. And some of them are not okay because so much of who they have been and how they measured their worthiness has been how they've showed up as mothers. And so self-care to me is doing the things that make you happy outside of your children, because I think it actually makes you a better mother and you feel better as a person.
100%. 100%. And I think a lot of people miss that too, because they think that saying, I need to have joy outside of my children, it almost feels blasphemous.
Yeah.
Right? It almost feels like, well, what do you mean
about it? Yeah.
They're supposed to be your all. And it's like, not really. Because one thing that's for certain is that these kids going to leave one day. Mm-hmm. They're going to leave out the house and they're going to be like, bye. And it's so important to have that identity that you speak of outside of them, because they need to live their lives as you do too, And
if we're really thinking about our children, I think one of the greatest gifts we can give our children is not having the burden of our happiness.
That part, I almost threw my coffee at the screen just now because it's a burden. That's exactly what it is.
So my academic training is as a clinical social worker. So I did work as a therapist for a little bit. And one of the things that came up often was a lot of the sadness, turmoil that people were feeling. A lot of that was due to what they felt their responsibility was to their loved ones. So many people were carrying so much hurt, so much, feel like they've disappointed people because they weren't living up to the expectations of the people in their life that they want to feel proud of them. And so, at this point, when I was doing this work is before I had my own children. And I remember having that kind of thought of like, how lucky have I been just as a person that I never had that for myself, that my mom's happiness or, my parents' happiness was not relegated to how I was as a child. If I was, behaved or misbehaved or whatever the case may be, like my mom's hopes and dreams were separate of mine. And I didn't understand how freeing that was until I was having people sitting in front of me who didn't have that freedom.
That's so good too, because I don't think many parents look at it as a burden. And it is. It really is, to put that amount of weight on a child that, or anyone, that you make me happy. You are the source for my happiness, my fulfillment, my joy, my, sense of purpose even. I don't think anyone, especially our children, should have to carry that.
I will say that, in my time working as a therapist, when I worked as a social worker, I probably witnessed some of like the worst things you could see happen to children. With that being said, I truly believe that 99.9% of the things that people do, they think they're doing it in the best interest of their children.
100%.
Yeah. And I truly believe that. Like, I met so many people who did really terrible things who actually do really love their children. They might not have had the tools to do it in a way that was right. And so I remind myself of that when for myself, to give myself grace as well, that like most people are doing things with good intentions. Yeah. But I think, like you're saying, that self-care piece, I take it really seriously because I know the impact that it could have for my children. I also am thinking like, my daughter's watching me. My sons are watching me.
Yes, we're modeling it for them.
And their expectations of themselves or their future partners, I want them to be very, very healthy ones. We have a very non-traditional household in that, me and my husband are very much a 50-50. Like, my husband does all the cooking. We kind of do, do what you're good at. In our home. I like how we decide.
Same. You're good at that? That's your job.
Yeah, like that I have to like be cleaning this or my husband has to be like, there isn't that expectation. I think I'm hoping for my children, it's going to allow them to decide like, what do they want to do? Like, you want to be a stay-at-home dad? You want to be a stay-at-home mom? You want to be a working mom or working dad? Like, they will feel comfortable feeling out whatever that is because they've been able to see us do that for ourselves.
Yeah. And it's also too, I always think too, not even what you're good at, but also what you care the most about. You clearly care more about this than I do. So it's your job.
Yes.
Yeah,
but I think it's these pieces of just, owning what you need to make yourself happy, not making that someone else's responsibility. And that's not just for your child. It's also for our partners. And also being able to say if I need something from the people that are in my life that I love, but it's not that it's part of their job to ensure my happiness or my stability in life. And I think that a lot of parents do believe that this idea that like I'm spending all my time with my kids, like my whole life is on hold to get them from A to Z. The time factor, yes. I think that's so important, the quality of the time that you're spending with them. But the putting your identity, your life, or whatever on hold, I think is one of the antithesis to self-care, particularly for mothers.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. Could not agree more.
Give yourself the gift of time and your baby the gift of a cozy lounge. You need a breather, mama? Bouncer. Need a shower? Bouncer. Designed with the advice of a pediatric orthopedist and preferred 2-to-1 to competitors, Ergobaby's Evolve 3-in-1 Bouncer is a safe place for baby when they can't be in your arms. Get yours today at a special listeners-only discount at ergobaby.com/podcast.
And you travel a lot. I mean, you're a world traveler. As a world traveler, can you share with us some of the things that you've noticed when it comes to postpartum? Because I think that's worthy of pointing out. And it might make all of us want to move. We're going to make the
American clients, the people in the United States cry.
Be like, we're moving, we're leaving, bye.
Like in Germany, you get 20 visits of a doula, and that's covered through your insurance or through the government. And it's not just like you get this service if you're low income, or you get this service if you are, super wealthy. Like everyone has access to this if they want it, where they come, they check on you. Your midwife visits you at home, does home visits. They actually come to you. In France, where, I spend a lot of my time now, postpartum, everyone gets what they call like basically your perinatal re-education. Pelvic floor therapy that I know in the States, like it's like $400 a pop and mostly out of pocket. It's something that is
it's a luxury.
It's part of what's standard for everyone to get 6 weeks after you go see the PT person, and it's standard care.
Absolutely.
I have a friend who is in France and was having issues with infertility. Her IV was covered by public insurance. Like covered. I have had clients who have mortgaged their homes in the United States to be able to do IVF. And not only was it covered, but the nurse actually came to the house to give her injections each week. So it's things like that are just, you don't have to worry about basic needs being met during your pregnancy or postpartum. And don't even get me started with childcare and all those things that are just standard part of
my gosh,
the fabric of the nation. I think it was Mandela that said, like, you can tell the fabric of a nation by how they treat their children. And so when you see the different subsidies that are available to families and children in a lot of the countries, and not just Europe and Asia and some other parts as well that I've been to, there is the universal idea that every person deserves to have certain standard of care during their pregnancy and postpartum. So you don't see the similar divide in healthcare that we see in the United States based on like how much money you make, the kind of healthcare that you're going to get. Not that there isn't divide in these other countries, because there definitely is if you can afford to have certain doctors or private care, et cetera. But generally, you don't see so much of the have and the have-nots when it comes to healthcare.
Wow, maybe this will be the thing to get my husband to have another baby. If I say, hey, if we go to France, we got like a change of scenery, we got a vacation, and we got a baby.
You get a baby, you get good healthcare, have some croissants, go hang out at the beach. Can't beat it.
That part. I'm just here for the croissants and the baby.
And they're one of like the shorter paternity leaves here. I think it's it's 4 to 5 months completely paid. And I think you can get up to 70% at a year. But my girlfriend who's from Sweden, she got 2 years.
Wow. What are some ways for us Americans here who may be trying to figure out the whole postpartum, prenatal situation debacle that we have here? What are some resources that we can lean into?
Well, so it's not all thorns. There's a lot of roses as well in our system, in the United States system. And so I always like to point out that there's no perfect place. And so one of the things that I can say that I really loved about having my children in the United States, that I feel that depending on the country that you're in, I think the idea of doing it naturally, using a midwife, I think those things are, I would say they're very mainstream. Maybe some people don't think they are, but I think they're very mainstream, and you have lots of accessibility to people who provide those services. Whereas in Europe, I know that people sometimes have difficulty finding a home birth. There might be one home birth midwife in, one or two in a large city. And if they're in France, they take 8 weeks vacation. So like you have maybe slim pickings. So I think one of the things that people should feel happy about in the United States, there's a lot of providers. I also think that postpartum, there's a lot more social support in the United States, meaning there's mommy and me classes. There are music classes you can go to. And not that you don't have these internationally, I just think that it's very much a part of the American experience that you're going to have your baby and get to go to this class and show them off and take a picture at the end and see how much you guys have grown. I think it's just so built in that people feel very comfortable doing these things. But I would say as far as what you can latch onto, like right now, something that I'm seeing a lot of clients, at our agency coming through with is the Carrot insurance. I don't know if you've heard about that.
No, I haven't. Explain to us what that is.
So Carrot is a supplemental insurance that you would get from your employer. It's basically a fertility and postpartum benefit, basically like your health insurance, but it's basically insurance for pregnancy and postpartum that lots of companies are starting to bring on. And we've had clients who've called and said they have like, a benefit of $20,000. Like it's not like they're getting $100. And just companies are starting to take on some of this responsibility of fixing that shortfall of care that pregnant people and families aren't getting. They are finding a way to do that. So if you are working for a company, ask them to get the care benefit, or you might have a company that has it. And so I would ask about that. But we are seeing clients are getting a lot of things reimbursed specific to their prenatal and postpartum care, paying for their midwife, paying for their doula, for their childbirth education classes. And it's all being covered by this insurance.
That's so good.
Also, a lot of state programs that are happening. I know in California through Medi-Cal and some other state-sponsored programs where you're able to get your doula covered under state-sponsored insurance.
Wow.
Those are resources, regardless of your income, that you're able to see if you are eligible for. But I think more than anything, I love this American idea of the community that we create. If you don't have it in your home, I think we are really good about creating that, like by having classes and Facebook groups and all those other places that you can get that village if you don't have one naturally of your own.
That's so good. Wow. What is a must-have product for new parents?
Oh, we see, I love products. I love products.
I love products. Give me all the products. I like them.
I'm like the mom, like, okay, I want it all. No.
I'll just say your top.
My top. Okay. So I love the DockATot. Yeah. I think everyone should have it. It's just so, babies love it. It's basically just like a little docking station for your baby. And now, technically, they're not supposed to sleep overnight in them. They're like, you're on the sofa, they're hanging out, and you're laying in your bed, they're hanging out, you're watching TV, whatever. But they love it because it gives them that cocoon feeling. And they're also just very well designed and gorgeous. So I tell everyone to have a DockATot.
Yeah.
I love white noise machines for babies, families in general. So I would probably say the Hatch is another one that I'd want to have. And it has a cool red nightlight on it as well. And then some type of carrier. So if I had to say a carrier, I guess we'd have to say Ergo.
I think so.
I would have an Ergo. But no, I think you have to have a carrier. Like, I wore all of my children. Yeah. I had an Ergo for all of them. So I think having those is really important because I think for my husband, for me, like everyone used the Ergo. Like it was universal. We even had a little baby Ergo for my son that he put like a baby doll in, which is super cute.
Yes, it's so cute.
There's a picture of my daughter breastfeeding her baby doll inside the baby Ergo, which is super cute.
Oh.
So those would be my three things.
For me, a carrier was a must-have for sure, just because even before I started, working with Ergo, but I know for me, it allowed me to have some semblance of my humanness, because it's like when you're in the depths of postpartum, you kind of become enmeshed with this little person where, because all of their needs are, solved by you. So it's just, you're breastfeeding and, and you're doing all these things and you haven't bathed in how many days and all of that. And for me, I feel like having an Ergo, a carrier, it allowed me to go and make myself some food. It allowed me to eat with both hands. It allowed me to wipe my butt.
Right? It allowed me to start hiking again, which felt really good. Like I remember
hiking.
My first hike back, we used an Ergo. It got me back to doing things that I enjoyed for myself, back to self-care. I love hiking. Me and my husband love hiking together and separately. And so having a carrier was one of the things that allowed me to get back to like feeling like myself in my body, which was really important.
So important.
Time and time again, when we ask parents what their must-have baby item is, they say, a baby carrier. And of course, we agree. Our Omni carriers come in breathable mesh or ultra soft cotton and offer a variety of carrier positions from birth through the toddler years. And when you visit ergobaby.com/podcast, you can get a special discount just for our listeners. Make your life with baby easier and get an Omni carrier today.
I have one more question. Actually, I have two questions. One, what keeps you up at night?
Ooh, how much time do we have? So many things keep me up at night. The state of the world keeps me up at night a lot. It often feels like we're fighting so many different fights on so many different fronts. It often feels like you're not sure where to begin. There's so many things happening in the world at one time that it sometimes feels hard to take a stand or to show up in a way that I feel like I'm supporting my community, because it can often feel overwhelming in the sense of helplessness that you just can't fix everything. And so what does that mean for our children? And so it's probably one of the bigger things that keep me up at night. I think for myself, and just something that's me, I want to make an impact. And so there's always this idea, like, am I doing what my personal purpose is, in my work, with my family, for my ancestors? Like, am I going to make the kind of impact and legacy that my ancestors would feel proud of, or feel like what they went through and what they endured was worthy of what I have created in my lifetime? Is something that is very near and dear to my heart and my soul.
I can say right now, you are. Let me say that you are. The work that you do, I believe that it honors them, and the way you take care. I always say, like, how we take care of ourselves and nurture ourselves and rest. That's how we honor those who came before us and who couldn't rest.
Yeah. So it's funny that you say that.
Yeah.
Is because, so this is something I didn't know when I became a doula. So my great-grandmother, her name was Magnolia. I did know her growing up. And my daughter is named Magnolia after my grandmother. We called her Nola, so we also call my daughter Nola. And she died when I was like 10 or 11. So I grew up knowing my great-grandparents. And I didn't know that her mom died giving birth to her. I didn't know that about her story. And I also didn't know, now this is just Black people stuff because we come in all colors. I didn't know that my grandmother was biracial.
Yeah.
So I was like, we come in all colors. Why would I have asked that? My mom, you didn't know? I was like, Mom, we come in all, like, why would I ask that question? Like, I was literally like 30 something years old. And I was just like, what? Yeah. But okay, so my mom's family is from Mississippi. And so given the time frame, that would have either been illegal, an illegal love affair, or something that wasn't a love affair and was actually illegal and not, we don't know what the nature is of their relationship. But I think about like what she endured and what her mother deserved, that I get to help create that for other women, that's part of my, legacy. Yes. Now, the not funny part of the story, but the irony of the story is that my dad's mother, who just passed this past July at 102, I know a lot about her story, and her mother died in childbirth as well, birthing triplets. Wow. And so to have had these two stories happen on both sides of my family, and for me to be doing this work, I'm always validated that I'm in the right space.
Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely in the right space.
But it feels so special and so much gratitude for it that it feels like there's a lot to make up for that sacrifice.
Yes. All right, last question. There are more than likely there's a parent up at night right now, pacing the floor, and they're probably trying to get their baby to sleep right now, and they're probably a little stressed, just a little bit. What would you tell them in this moment?
That they're doing a great job. That this too shall pass. That just when you think that like this is the worst it's going to get, it's going to change, it's going to get better, and you're going to get great at it, and it's going to change again. But one of the things that I always say with my clients, I talk a lot about this calm is contagious and the energy of parenting. That so much of what happens, and I do believe this, I do believe that our children picked us. And so everything about you, even the flaws, even all the mistakes that you think you're making, it's part of what your child wanted on their journey. And so just know that you are the perfect person to be making those mistakes with your child, because that's what they, have asked for in this lifetime. But I think that I also would say to them to give themselves grace, the same kind of grace that they want their child to give themselves. And to be reminded in that energy of parenting, when you expect the best to happen, that you expect the best for yourself, that you expect the best outcome, that it oftentimes will work out in that way. And when it doesn't, it's not the end of the world, and this too shall pass.
That calm is contagious part, that right there.
It's true.
It's so good.
Parents ask me all the time about that. Like, why they did that? Like, this is how I came up with that. So basically they would be like, oh, I did this. And like, when I do it, it's the exact opposite. But when you do it, they just lay down or they just stop crying or they just whatever. And I just kind of told them, like, it's not what I'm doing, it's what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking. And I know that might sound woo to people, but they pick up on that sense of confidence. They pick up on that state of calm and they respond to that. Yeah. Not exactly what I'm doing, which is why you can do what I do step by step and not have the same outcome.
Thank you so much, Brandi. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
And we're so honored that you sat and talked with us today.
I am too.
Thank you all for listening. And we hope that the info shared, the word shared, has made your life with baby a little bit easier. All right. So that was a really insightful episode. My takeaway was how she made self-care a little bit more practical. That it's not just relegated to baths and massages, but it's more so an active decision to remain tethered to ourselves and our identity as an individual, as a person outside of our little one. That was one thing. Another thing that stuck out was that it's okay to find joy outside of our children. That's something that I hear so much as a doula, as a parent as well, that our kids are supposed to be our world. Another thing that stuck out to me was how vastly different the US is from other countries and supporting parents. It made me want to pack my bags and to move. Another thing that stuck out for me, that you are the perfect parent for your little one. That in all of your trying to figure it out and make sense of this mess and chaos that is parenthood, you are the perfect parent for your children. They picked you. And that, for me, I feel like that's what I should leave you on today. That stuck out for me. Ergobaby is dedicated to building a global community of confident parents. The Life of Baby podcast is just one of many ways we hope to support parents through all the joys and jobs of parenting. This podcast was produced by Tiffany Toby, consulting producer Anthony Gannon, edited by Angel Hunter and Hannah Richardson Speckert, written by Victoria Allen, sound design and theme song by John Jackson, graphics designed by Noah Friedenberg, and our executive producers are Christina Saletti and Kalani Robinson. And I am your host, Brandi Sellers Jackson.